My stepmom bought a baby on the dark web. My name is Maya. The year this happened, I was 10 years old. My biological mom died of cancer when I was a toddler. It was just Dad and me in this cold world of concrete and glass until he met Lauren. Lauren was different. She was a wellness influencer. She was beautiful, modern, and always smelled of lavender and expensive sage. She did yoga for 3 hours a day, drank celery juice, and believed absolutely in manifestation. She believed if you wanted something bad enough, you could pull it from the universe. At first, it was great. But then, the darkness started creeping into our smart home, not from a haunted forest, but from the glowing screen of Lauren's laptop. Lauren wanted a baby of her own to complete her perfect family picture on Instagram. They tried IVF once, twice, 3 times, all failed. The doctor said it was impossible. Dad accepted it. He told her, "We have Maya, that's enough." But for Lauren, it wasn't enough. She stopped seeing Western doctors. She called them frauds. She started locking herself in her meditation room for hours. She sat in the dark, wearing noise-canceling headphones, staring at her computer. I don't know what sites she was visiting. I just saw the strange, black-wrapped packages arriving at our door. No return labels. Around November, when the Seattle rain started to blur the city lights, I started getting sick. I was the captain of the swim team. I was strong, but suddenly I felt drained, like someone had pulled the battery out of my back. Every morning, Lauren made me a special superfood green smoothie. "Drink up, sweetie," she'd smile, her teeth perfect and white. "It's good for your aura. It helps connect our family's energy." I drank it to make her happy. It tasted metallic, hidden under the sweetness of bananas. But the more I drank, the weaker I got. I started sleeping all the time. And in my sleep, I didn't see monsters. I saw a baby. A perfect, pale baby boy. And I heard Lauren whispering, "Share, Maya. Share your life with him." Dad noticed something was wrong, not with intuition, but with data. One night, checking the smart home hub on his iPad, he frowned. He pulled up the family health app linked to my Apple Watch. "Lauren," he asked, his voice serious, "why does Maya's heart rate spike to 160 beats per minute every night at exactly 3-odd a.m.? Lauren, meditating on the floor, didn't open her eyes. "Just nightmares, Jack. She's a kid." "No," Dad swiped the screen. "This heart rate matches a sprinter, and it lasts for exactly 30 minutes, every single night for 2 weeks. Something is wrong." Lauren opened her eyes. They were cold. "You trust your machines too much, Jack. She's fine. I'm healing her." Dad didn't argue, but that night, he ordered a micro nanny cam and hid it inside the smoke detector in my bedroom. 3 days later, Dad got his proof. He pretended to go on a business trip, but he actually checked into a hotel right across the street. He sat there, watching the live feed from my room. The clock hit 3 a.m. On the black and white infrared screen, Dad saw my door open. Lauren walked in. She wasn't wearing her silk pajamas. She was wearing a black robe. She walked to my bed. I was out cold, sedated by whatever was in those smoothies. She reached under my pillow. She pulled something out. She placed it on my chest. Then, she knelt on the floor and began to chant. Through the camera's microphone, Dad heard it, a strange, hissing language. "His blood is your blood. His breath is your breath. Take it. Manifest." On the screen, Dad saw my body twitch. My Apple Watch heart rate monitor went red. 100, 20, 50. And the thing on my chest, it was pulsing, breathing. Dad didn't wait. He ran out of the hotel, sprinted across the street, and used his admin override to unlock the front door. When he kicked my bedroom door open, Lauren screamed. She tried to hide the object. Dad shoved her aside. He turned on the lights. He looked at the thing lying next to my face. It wasn't a wooden doll. It was a lump of wax, dark red like raw meat, molded into the crude shape of a curled fetus. But the terrifying part was the hair. My hair. Long strands of my hair were rooted deep into the wax, and stuck into the heart of the doll was a small medical needle connected to a thin tube running directly into a vein in my wrist, hidden under my sleeve. She was transfusing my blood into that thing. "You're insane!" Dad ripped the needle out of my arm. Blood stained the white sheets. Lauren lunged at him, eyes wild. "You don't understand. This is quantum science. I bought the ritual on the dark web. They said if the host feeds it with DNA, the soul transfers. Just 3 more days, Jack. 3 more days and I'll be pregnant. Give him back." Dad looked at the disgusting wax fetus. He didn't hesitate. He grabbed the thing and marched into the living room. "No, Jack, don't!" Lauren screamed, clawing at his back. Dad ignored her. He threw the wax doll straight into the fireplace. He cranked the dial to maximum. The flames roared up. The wax hissed as it melted. It bubbled and turned into a black, oily puddle. And then, a sound came from the fireplace. A high-pitched, escaping whistle from the melting wax, but it sounded exactly like the shriek of a dying infant. Then, silence. The police arrived 10 minutes later. They found the transaction history on Lauren's encrypted laptop. She had paid thousands in Bitcoin for the ritual and for illegal sedatives. Lauren was arrested. She didn't go to prison. She went to a secure psychiatric facility. She spent her days staring at the wall, muttering about her stolen son. The Paper Skin. My name is Tamara. Let me tell you about my father, David. He's a shark in the Chicago financial world. A penthouse in the Loop, Armani suits, and a heart colder than the wind off Lake Michigan. He married my mom for her looks, but he absolutely despised his own mother, my grandma Edith. He saw her as a stain from his poverty-stricken past. He dumped her in a cheap nursing home and waited for her to die. Grandma Edith was strange. She survived everything. The babies were terrified of her. I remember when a cousin brought her toddler over. The kid screamed the moment Grandma came near. He didn't look at her face. He stared at the empty space behind her neck, pushing at the air like he was trying to shove something away. On her deathbed, Grandma grabbed Dad's hand. "David, when I'm gone, you will be lonely. If you stay cold, he'll come to you for warmth." Dad just wiped his hand with a sanitizer wipe. "Save the ghost stories, old woman." She died. There was no mourning period. Dad did something cruel. He hired a crew to clear out her room at the nursing home. He took all her belongings, photos, clothes, memories, and had them dumped in a landfill. Trash, he called it. That very night, the haunting began. It started physically. Dad woke up and couldn't stand up straight. His neck was retracted, his shoulders slumped. He walked like a hunchback. He went to the best chiropractor in the city. The doctor looked at the x-rays and frowned. "David, your spine is fine, but your muscles are in extreme spasm. It's like you're carrying a 60-pound weight on your shoulders 24/7. Are you lifting heavy objects?" "I sit at a desk," Dad snapped. He came home freezing. He wore 3 cashmere sweaters even though the thermostat was set to 80 degrees. "It feels like a block of ice is pressed against my neck," he shivered. Then came the sounds. Crinkle, crinkle, like dry old newspaper being crumbled. It came from under his bed, from the closet. Dad would wake up screaming, swinging a golf club at the air. "Come out, you rats!" But there were no rats, just tiny scraps of yellowed, brittle paper appearing on the floor. The horror escalated when the cuts started. Dad came to breakfast with blood on his collar. His neck and shoulders were covered in hundreds of tiny, thin lacerations, paper cuts. "I dreamt someone was hugging me," he whispered, pale as a sheet. But his skin, it was rough, sharp, like sandpaper. The breaking point was last Tuesday. Dad came home drunk, his mental defenses down. He stumbled into my room, eyes rolling back. "Tamara, get him off. He's choking me." I looked at him, and for the first time, I saw it. Under the dim nightlight, Perched on my father's slumped shoulders was a shadow. Small, skinny. But its skin wasn't flesh. It was gray, patchy, and covered in black text. It was a child made of rotting, wet paper mache. It had its legs wrapped around Dad's throat, its paper hands clamping his jaw shut. Dad started gagging. He reached into his own throat and pulled out a wad of balled-up newspaper. Then another, and another. Old, black-inked newsprint soaked in saliva and bile. "He's making me eat," Dad choked. "He says eat to stay warm. Eat his clothes," Dad snapped. He ran into his home office, started tearing up contracts, money, and books. He shoved handfuls of paper into his mouth, chewing frantically. Ink drooled down his chin like black blood. "Give back the blanket. Take the paper!" He screamed and chewed, swallowing until he vomited blood. In the midst of this chaos, while Dad was losing his mind, Mom received a call. It wasn't a doctor, and it wasn't the police. It was Mrs. Kowalski, Grandma Edith's old roommate from the nursing home. Mrs. Kowalski was a sharp, no-nonsense woman who had spent years listening to Grandma's weeping in the dark. She told Mom she couldn't stay silent anymore. "I need to tell you what Edith was truly carrying," Mrs. Kowalski's voice rasped over the phone. "She tried to tell David herself, you know. God, she tried. Last Christmas, when he dropped by for those 10 minutes to sign papers, she grabbed his wrist, crying, trying to confess about the winter of '80, about his brother. David just laughed at her. He told the nurse she was hallucinating and walked out without looking back. But she told me. She told me everything. And that's when the horrific truth spilled out. The winter of 1980. The Great Recession was crushing Chicago. But for Edith, the tragedy started months earlier. David's father, a shift worker at the Southwark steel mill, was killed in a machinery accident. The company lawyers found a loophole, denying Edith the pension and insurance money she was owed. She was left a widow with a 5-year-old son and another on the way, drowning in unpaid bills. But when the landlord came knocking in December, Edith had nothing left to give. They were evicted, forcing them to survive in a frozen sedan parked in a desolate alleyway behind a shutting-down factory. It was one of the coldest winters in Chicago history. Grandma had just given birth to her second son, Benny, inside that car. They had one heavy wool blanket. Just one. David, even at 5, possessed a selfish survival instinct. In the middle of the night, he kicked his baby brother away and hogged the entire blanket for himself. Grandma, desperate and shivering, scavenged the dumpsters. She found stacks of the Chicago Tribune. With no other option, she wrapped baby Benny in layers of old newspapers to try and trap the heat. But paper provides no warmth against 0-degree wind. Benny froze to death on Christmas Eve, swaddled in the sports section. Grandma carried that guilt and Benny's clinging spirit on her back for 40 years. She was his host, but now she was gone. Benny was cold. He needed a new host. He wanted the brother who stole his blanket. He's in a mental ward now. His stomach is ruined from ingesting toxic ink and cellulose. When I visit him, he's strapped to the bed, but he still can't lie flat. His head is craned forward, straining against the straps. He stares at the ceiling, whispering to the air above his left shoulder. "I know, Benny. Wet paper is heavy. Stop rubbing my neck. It tears the skin." And in that sterile white room, I heard it, clear as day, right next to my father's ear. Crinkle, crinkle. The Tenant of the Cliffs. This story happened back in the winter of 2012. I heard it from a buddy of mine, Brody, who used to work security for those massive estates out on the cliffs. You know the ones. The kind of places where the driveways are longer than my entire neighborhood and the gates are taller than God. It was December, the kind of winter where the wind comes off the Atlantic like a razor blade, stripping the heat right out of your bones. Enter Ford. Ford was a mechanic, a damn good one. But luck wasn't on his side. The economy was in the toilet. His shop had cut his hours, and his landlord was threatening to kick him, his wife Sloane, and their little girl, Harlow, out on the street. Ford was desperate, and desperation, it makes you do stupid things. Brody, trying to be a good friend, tossed Ford a lifeline, or maybe it was an anchor. He told Ford about this vacant mansion out on the cliffs. The owners were some old money family, currently wintering in the south of France, or some other fancy hellhole. The place needed a caretaker for a week just to keep the pipes from freezing and the boiler running. Just don't go up to the third floor, Brody had warned him, and stay out of the master suite. The old man who built the place, he was particular. Didn't like dirt, didn't like noise, didn't like people. Ford didn't care about ghosts or grumpy billionaires. He just saw a free roof and a warm boiler room. So they packed their rusted-out pickup truck and drove up. When they pulled through those iron gates, the house loomed over them like a judgment. It was a monstrosity of gray stone, sitting right on the edge of the cliff, staring blindly out at the black ocean. It didn't look like a home. It looked like a tomb for giants. Inside, it smelled like old money. You know that smell? Dust, floor wax, and something metallic, like polished silver or dried blood. They set up camp in the servants' quarters down in the basement. It was the only place that felt small enough to be safe. Sloane was nervous, jumping at every creak of the floorboards. But Ford, he was just pissed off at the world, trying to fix a leaky valve and ignoring the fact that the air in that house felt heavy enough to crush a man. Things went south on the second day. Ford was in the basement wrenching on a pipe when he heard talking. A little voice. Harlow. He wiped the grease off his hands and walked up to the main hall. He found his 5-year-old daughter standing at the bottom of the grand staircase, this massive spiraling wooden thing that looked like a rib cage. She was staring up at the landing on the second floor. "Baby, who are you talking to?" Ford asked. Harlow didn't turn around. She just pointed a tiny finger up at the darkness. "The grumpy man, Daddy. He says we're loud. He says we smell like grease." Ford looked up. There was nothing there but shadows and a massive oil painting of the original owner, a guy with eyes like a hawk and a sneer that said you weren't worth the dirt on his shoes. "Ain't nobody there, honey," Ford muttered, picking her up. He felt a chill run down his spine, sharp and sudden. Just an ugly picture. But as he turned his back, he heard it, distinctly. Tap, 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 the sound of a heavy cane hitting the hardwood floor, slow, deliberate, right behind him. Ford spun around, nothing, just the dust motes dancing in the cold air. "Screw this place," he whispered. That night, the house stopped playing games. Around 2 a.m., Sloane woke up screaming. Ford scrambled out of his cot. Harlow was thrashing on her bed. And I don't mean just a bad dream. The kid was convulsing. Her back arched off the mattress like she was being pulled by invisible strings. Her skin was burning hot, like touch a stove hot. "She's dying, Ford. Do something." Sloane was hysterical. Ford grabbed the kid, threw everyone in the truck, and tore out of there. He drove like a maniac down the icy coastal roads to the ER. But here's the kicker. The exact second, the truck tires crossed the property line and hit the public road. Harlow stopped screaming. Her body relaxed. The fever? Gone, like someone flipped a switch. By the time they got to the hospital, the kid was asking for ice cream. The doctors looked at Ford like he was cracked. "She's fine," they said. "Maybe a night terror. Go home." Go home. Yeah, right. They sat in the truck in the hospital parking lot. The heater was barely working. The gas gauge was on empty. They had $4 in cash and nowhere to go. Sloane was crying softly. "I can't go back there, Ford. That house, it hates us. I can feel it." Ford slammed his hand against the steering wheel. "We got no choice, Sloane. It's 10 below zero out here. We freeze or we deal with a creepy house. We go back, just for tonight. Tomorrow, I'll beg for an advance." So, they went back. As they drove up that long driveway, the house was waiting. All the lights were out, but it felt awake. They went back down to the servants' room. Ford didn't sleep. He sat in a chair by the door, a heavy pipe wrench in his hand, a bottle of cheap whiskey on the floor. He was watching, waiting. 3 a.m. The witching hour. The temperature in the room dropped. I'm talking seeing your breath cold. The windows frosted over from the inside. Harlow sat up. Her eyes were open, but they were rolled back, showing only the whites. And then she started to choke. It wasn't a cough. It was like invisible hands were wrapped around her tiny throat. "Ford!" Sloane screamed, trying to pull the invisible hands away. "Help her! Look at her neck!" Ford scrambled over. He saw it. Deep purple bruises were forming on his daughter's neck. Fingerprints. Big, thick fingerprints. The old man wasn't just haunting them. He was evicting them, and he was starting with the weakest one. Something inside Ford snapped. It was the rage of a man who's been pushed around his whole life. Pushed by the boss, by the landlord, by the bank, and now by some dead-rich prick who thought he owned the afterlife, too. Ford grabbed the whiskey bottle, took a swig, and stood up. He didn't look scared anymore. He looked lethal. He marched out of the room, stomped up the stairs to the grand hallway, and stood right in the center of that expensive marble floor. He looked up at the darkness of the second-floor landing. "Hey!" Ford roared. His voice echoed off the cold stone walls. "Listen to me, you fecking coward!" The house rumbled. The chandelier above him swayed ominously. "You think you're better than us?" Ford screamed, pointing the wrench at the shadows. "You think because we got grease under our nails we don't belong here? Is that it? You want to pick on a 5-year-old girl?" A cold wind blasted through the hall, smelling of rot and expensive cigars. Ford didn't flinch. He threw the wrench on the ground with a loud clang. He spread his arms wide, chest open, defenseless. "Come on then," he bellowed, tears of rage in his eyes. "You want a life? You want someone to pay the toll? Then take me! Take me, you son of a bitch! Leave my little girl alone. She's got a whole life. I'm just a mechanic. I'm nothing. Trade. Right now." Silence. Absolute, heavy silence. Then, slowly, from the top of the stairs, tap, 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 the sound of the cane coming down. Down in the basement, Sloane gasped. The pressure on Harlow's throat vanished. The bruises started to fade before her eyes. The fever broke instantly. Harlow fell back onto the pillow, sleeping peacefully. "Ford?" Sloane called out, her voice trembling. "She's okay? Ford?" There was no answer from upstairs. Sloane was too terrified to go up. She stayed with Harlow, praying until the sun came up. When the morning light finally hit the gray stones of the mansion, Sloane crept upstairs. She found Ford. He was sitting in one of those high-backed velvet armchairs in the middle of the grand hall. He looked peaceful, like he was just resting after a long shift. His head was tipped back. Sloane shook him. "Ford, baby, wake up, we gotta go." He was cold, stone cold. The paramedics came, the cops came. Brody came, looking like he was gonna throw up. The coroner, a cynical guy who'd seen it all, unbuttoned Ford's collar to check for a pulse, even though he knew there wasn't one. He froze. "Jesus Christ," the coroner muttered. He motioned for the cop to look. There, on Ford's neck, were 10 distinct bruises. Deep black and blue marks, not from a rope, not from a fall, from hands. Massive, powerful hands that had squeezed the life out of him. Ford had made a deal, a life for a life, a blue-collar soul for a Gilded Age ghost. He paid the rent for his family with the only currency he had left. They say that mansion is still empty, can't sell it. But locals say on quiet winter nights, if you park your car near the gate and kill the engine, you can hear sounds drifting from the house. You can hear the tap, tap, tap of a cane. And then, faintly, the sound of a wrench hitting the floor and a raspy voice whispering in the dark. "Get the hell out of my house." But here's the thing. People argue about whose voice it is. Some say it's the old man. But me, I think it's Ford, still standing his ground, still protecting the door, still the toughest son of a bitch in Rhode Island. The Last Call. You think ghosts only hang out in graveyards or rotting cabins in the woods? Nah, you got it all wrong. Spirits, they're like us. They like the noise. They like the warmth. And most of all, they love the booze. I'm Mike. I've been bartending in Chicago for 10 years. I work at this joint downtown. Let's just call it the Basement. I ain't gonna tell you the real name. You might be sitting in it right now for all I know. The place is old. Prohibition era old. Built back when Al Capone ran this city. To get in, you gotta walk down these steep wooden stairs that smell like damp earth and history. The owner? Some rich kid who inherited the deed but is too scared to step foot inside after midnight. He knows the rules. We all do. Sal, the manager, an old school Italian guy, he told me on my first day, "Mikey, keep your head down. And never, ever mention the original owners after the clock strikes 12. See, this place, it's crowded. And I don't mean with customers. Let me tell you 3 stories. And these ain't fairy tales. These are the reasons why I don't stay a minute past closing time. Story number 1, The Lady in Red. We had this kid, Danny, a barback, college student, fresh-faced, scared of his own shadow. One afternoon, the AC unit busted. Sal told us to come in early to let the repair guys in. I was indisposed, hungover, so Danny got there first. 3 p.m. The place was empty, dark, quiet as a tomb. Danny pulled a couple of chairs together to take a nap by the bar. He was just drifting off when he heard it. Click, clack, click, clack. High heels on hardwood, slow, deliberate. He opened his eyes. Standing right there, in the middle of the empty bar, was a woman. And she didn't look like she belonged in 2012. She was wearing a flapper dress, shimmering red like spilled wine. Finger waves in her hair, long cigarette holder. Danny, being the naive kid he was, sat up and stammered, Ma'am, we're closed. Can I help you?" The woman smiled, but it wasn't a nice smile. It was sharp, predatory. She took a drag from an unlit cigarette and blew out smoke that smelled like lilacs and rot. "Tell Sal." Her voice sounded like it was coming from a radio. "Tell Sal I like the new paint, but the music, it's trash." Danny nodded, terrified. "Yes, ma'am, I'll tell him." He turned around for 1 second to grab the phone. When he looked back, gone. Vanished. Thin air. We checked the security tapes later, and this is the part that messed me up. On the screen, it was just Danny, talking to nothing, nodding at the empty air. But the bar stool next to him, it spun. Once, twice, all by itself. Sal didn't say a word. He just poured a shot of whiskey and tossed it on the floor. "Respects to the missus," he muttered. Story number 2, The Man with No Legs. Then there was Chloe, regular customer. She was going through a bad breakup, so she spent every night at table number 4, the dark booth in the far corner. One night, around 1:00 a.m., the place was clearing out. Chloe stormed up to the bar, looking pissed. "Mike," she snapped, "tell that creep in the corner to stop staring at me." I looked up. "Which creep?" "The guy in the black suit, slicked back hair. He keeps winking at me and laughing. It's gross." I looked at table 4. It was empty. Completely empty. "Chloe," I said, wiping a glass, "you've had too much gin. There's nobody there." "Are you blind?" she yelled, pointing a shaking finger. "He's right there. He's waving at me. Look at that smug look on his face." I looked again. Still nothing. But the candle on that table? The flame was standing straight up, unmoving, like time had stopped in that booth. Chloe turned back to scream at the guy again. But then, she froze. Her face went from angry to sheet white in a heartbeat. Her eyes bulged out. "Mike," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Mike, under the table. He doesn't have any feet." She threw a 20 on the counter and ran, left her purse and everything. Never saw her again. Sal told me later that table 4 was where the old mob boss got whacked, garroted from behind. Guess he's still sitting there, waiting for his last drink. Story number 3, The Hand in the Stall. But this is the one that still makes me check under my bed at night. It happened to Big Dave. Dave was a linebacker, huge guy, 6 TR, 250 pounds of muscle. Not the kind of guy who scares easy. It was late, just me, Danny, and Dave closing out his tab. Dave went to the head, the men's room, before heading out. Danny and I were stacking chairs when we heard it. A scream, not a shout. A scream, like a pig being slaughtered. Holy get off me! I grabbed my baseball bat, don't ask, and we ran into the bathroom. Big Dave was backed up against the sinks. This giant of a man was shaking like a leaf. And, I kid you not, he had pissed himself. Dark stain right on his khakis. "Dave, what happened?" I yelled. He pointed a trembling finger at the last stall. The f***ing hand. I looked. The stall door was creaking slightly. Dave couldn't breathe right. He told us he was standing at the urinal right next to the stall. He heard a banging sound. Thump, thump, like someone hitting the wood from the inside. He looked down. You know that gap under the stall partitions? He said a hand reached out, but not a human hand. He said it was black, covered in thick, coarse hair, with fingernails like claws caked in dirt. It reached out from under the stall and grabbed his ankle. He said it felt like ice, and it squeezed hard. I told Danny to stay with Dave. I gripped the bat and walked over to the stall. My heart was hammering in my throat. I kicked the door open. Bam! Empty. Nothing but a dirty toilet bowl. But then I looked down at the wooden partition near the floor. There were marks. 5 distinct scratches in the wood, and a smear of something black, like grease or old blood. And the smell? God, it smelled like a sewer that had been sealed up for 50 years. Dave never came back. I don't blame him. Since that night, I have a rule. I don't care if my bladder's about to burst. I don't care if it's freezing outside. After 1 a.m., I pee in the alley. Because in this place, you're never really drinking alone. So here's your receipt. Tip your bartender. And for the love of God, don't look under the stalls. Dead occupancy. It's Mike. Yeah, that Mike. The unlucky bartender from that basement dive where the customers were afraid to take a leak because a hairy hand might grab their ankles. After that incident with Big Dave pissing his pants, I quit. I told myself, that's it. I'm done. I need a normal job. No more ghosts, no more creepy basements. I thought I could just walk away. But here's the thing about the dark side of this city. Once it knows your name, it doesn't just let you go, it's like gum on your shoe. Before I tell you about the fresh hell I'm in now, I gotta update you on the old place. Even though I bailed, Rocco, the night shift security guy, still calls me up, sounding like he's about to crack. Rocco tells me the place is getting worse. He says around 3 a.m., after the staff is gone and the doors are locked, he starts hearing music coming from the main bar. And not the trashy pop music we play for the college kids. He's talking about jazz. Old school, roaring 20s piano, the sound of crystal glasses clinking, and the low hum of people laughing. The first time it happened, Rocco grabbed his flashlight and ran upstairs, thinking someone broke in or the sound system was glitching. But the second he threw open those heavy oak doors, snap. Silence. Dead silence. The room was pitch black, cold as a meat locker, and empty. He went back down to the garage, terrified. And as soon as his ass hit the chair, plink, plink, plink. The piano started up again. Rocco told me, they're throwing parties up there, Mike. They wait for the living to leave so they can have their fun. Hearing that made me feel pretty good about quitting. I thought I had dodged a bullet. So, I'm unemployed, sitting on my couch, when my cousin Val calls me. Now, you gotta know Val. She just got back from overseas. She's a girl boss type, ambitious, sharp, and tough as nails. She wants to open a high-end nightclub here in the city, something massive. She needed someone to design the drink menu and set up the bar. The pay was good, so I said yes. The club is still under construction, but Val had already imported a mountain of expensive furniture and glassware from Italy. She had nowhere to put it, so she rented a cheap apartment in an old tenement building in the Bronx to use as a temporary storage unit and a training space for the new staff. This building, man, it's a piece of work. Red brick, built back during the Great Depression, crumbling walls, and the hallway always smells like cheap bleach and boiled cabbage. The unit is room 302 on the 3rd floor. My first day there was in July, a sweltering, humid New York summer day. I walked up 3 flights of stairs, sweating like a pig. But the moment, and I mean the moment, I stepped inside room 302, the sweat on my neck turned to ice. It wasn't air conditioning. It was a stagnant, damp cold, like the air inside a mausoleum, and there was a smell. Burning herbs. I looked over at the makeshift bar Val had set up. She was walking around the room waving a bundle of burning leaves. Sage. She was smudging the place. You know, that new age stuff people do to clear negative energy. I laughed at her. "What's this, Val? You turning into a witch now? We got a guest or something?" I thought I was joking, but Val and her best friend Lenore didn't laugh. They looked at each other, eyes wide and shifting, totally avoiding my gaze. Val muttered, "It's just, the room smells musty, Mike, just clearing the air. Don't worry about it." Yeah, right. I smelled a rat. Later, I went to use the bathroom. No toilet paper. Typical. I walked out and said, "Hey Val, we're out of TP. Come with me down to the bodega on the corner to grab some." Val nodded immediately. Then she turned to Lenore and said, "You coming?" Lenore is a tough woman. She's seen it all. But she grabbed my arm so hard, her knuckles turned white. "Yeah, I'm coming. Do not leave me here alone." I thought that was weird. It's 1 p.m. on a sunny Tuesday. Why are 2 grown women afraid to be left alone in an apartment? We went downstairs. I went into the bodega to get the paper and some snacks. Val stayed outside on the sidewalk, chain smoking. I kid you not, she stood out there in the 95-degree heat for 20 minutes waiting for us. She would rather risk heat stroke than go back up to that room by herself. That night, I cornered Lenore with a bottle of tequila and made her talk. She finally spilled the beans. She whispered, "Don't tell Val I told you. She doesn't want to scare you off." Here's what happened on move-in day. After the movers dropped off all the boxes, the living room was a maze. Cartons stacked floor to ceiling. Val stayed behind to do inventory. She was alone, counting crates, when she heard a sound. Scritch, scratch. It was coming from deep inside the pile of boxes. Val thought it was a rat. This is the Bronx, after all. Rats are practically tenants. She squeezed herself between 2 stacks of boxes to check it out, and she saw it. It wasn't a rat. Sitting nestled in a gap between 2 massive crates was an old woman. Lenore said Val described her as skeletal, skin hanging off her bones like wet paper, wild white hair matted with dirt. She was wearing a filthy, tattered nightgown. The old woman was sitting there, hugging an empty cardboard box like it was gold, and she was staring right at Val. Her eyes were milky white, filled with pure rage, possessive rage, like a dog guarding a bone. Val froze. She couldn't speak. She knew the door was locked. She knew she had been alone the whole time. There was no way a homeless woman snuck in. Val blinked. The old woman didn't move. She just glared. Val turned and ran. She bolted out of there so fast she almost knocked Lenore down in the hallway. When they got the super to open the door and check, nothing. Empty. But the boxes where the woman had been sitting, they were shuffled around, like someone had made a nest. Val knew then. She had moved her expensive inventory into a house that was already occupied. That's why she's burning sage like a maniac every day. But wait, it gets better. The neighbor confirmed it. Next door, in 301, lives Mrs. Kovacs, a grumpy old Eastern European lady who hates everyone. One day, she stopped me in the hall, screaming in my face. "You people," she yelled. "What are you doing in there every night? Why so much noise?" I was confused. "Mrs. Kovacs, we leave at 6 p.m. Nobody sleeps there." She narrowed her eyes. "Don't lie to me. Every night at 2 a.m. I hear it, right against my kitchen wall. Drag Drag, the sound of furniture moving, boxes opening, click-clack. You are looking through things, I argued with her. Lady, you're crazy. Maybe you heard the previous tenant? Mrs. Kovacs froze. Her face went pale. The previous tenant, she whispered. That crazy old woman. She was a hoarder. She died in there, you know, buried under her own trash. When she was alive, she used to stay up all night counting her garbage. Click-clack. Moving things around, she looked at me, and I looked at her. We both realized it at the same time. Mrs. Kovacs wasn't hearing us. She was hearing the old noise returning. See, the ghost, the hoarder, she was dormant. But when Val filled the apartment with hundreds of new boxes, it woke her up. She thinks it's her treasure. She thinks she has a new pile of junk to organize. The final straw was the interns. Val hired some college kids to learn bartending. A couple of them were lazy and decided to crash on yoga mats in the storeroom during their lunch break. Every single one of them who slept there had the same nightmare. They said they would wake up paralyzed, sleep paralysis, they couldn't move a muscle. And then they would feel a weight on their chest. They'd open their eyes and see her, the skeletal old woman. She was crouching on top of their chests, pressing the air out of their lungs. She would put her dry, nasty face right up to theirs, smelling like mold and rot, and hiss. Mine! It's mine! Get out! Thief! One kid woke up with a red handprint on his cheek, like he'd been slapped. So, yeah, we're still renting the place. The lease is signed, and Val is too stubborn to lose her deposit. She just keeps burning sage and leaving out little offerings of crackers and water, whispering, "We're just visiting, Grandma. We aren't taking your stuff." It seems to keep her calm during the day, but Mrs. Kovacs says the noise at night is getting louder. Honestly, every time I'm in there counting bottles, I feel it. I feel eyes on my back. I feel like someone is crouching in the shadows behind the boxes, watching my every move, waiting for me to touch something that belongs to her. I tried to run from a haunted bar, and I ended up in a haunted storage unit. I guess in this city, you don't pay rent for the space. You pay rent for the roommates you can't see. Till death do us part. You want to hear a love story? All right, pull up a chair. But I'm warning you, this ain't The Notebook. This isn't flowers and chocolates. This is the kind of love that refuses to die, literally. The kind that rots you from the inside out. I heard this one from a girl named Nina. She's still around, physically at least, but if you look into her eyes, you can tell a part of her is gone, buried 6 feet under. It starts in a small town in the Midwest. You know the type. One stoplight, a church on every corner, and everyone knows everyone's business. Nina and Billy were the town's golden couple, high school sweethearts. Nina was the prom queen, blonde, sweet as pie. Billy was the star quarterback, built like a tank, the kind of guy who would peak in high school if he hadn't. Well, you'll see. They were inseparable. Their parents were best friends. It was just understood that they would get married, buy a house down the road, and raise a bunch of athletic kids. They had it all planned out. But life has a nasty sense of humor. On their 2-year anniversary, which also happened to be Billy's 19th birthday, Nina was waiting for him at their favorite diner. She had his gift wrapped on the table, watching the door, smiling like an idiot. Her phone rang. It wasn't Billy, it was a paramedic. Billy had been in an accident just 2 blocks away. An 18-wheeler lost its brakes and T-boned his old Mustang, flattened it like a pancake. Nina ran to the scene. The cops tried to hold her back, but she saw enough. She saw Billy, or what was left of him. His lower half was crushed under the truck's tires, but his eyes were wide open, staring right at her. His hand was twitching on the pavement, reaching out, trying to grab hers one last time. Then, the light went out. Nina collapsed right there on the asphalt. The funeral was 3 days later. Closed casket, obviously. Nina sat by that box for 3 days straight. She didn't eat, didn't sleep. She just whispered to the wood like he could still hear her. When it was time to move the casket to the hearse, 6 of Billy's football buddies stepped up as pallbearers. These were big guys, linemen, strong as oxen. They grabbed the handles and heaved. Nothing. The casket wouldn't budge. It was like it was bolted to the church floor. The guys strained, faces turning purple, veins popping in their shoulder necks, but that box was dead weight. It was unnaturally heavy. The whispers started in the pews. "He doesn't want to go," old ladies muttered. "He's holding on." Nina stood up. She walked over to the casket, placed her hand on the lid, and leaned in close. "Billy," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I know you don't want to leave. I know. But you're scaring them, baby. You have to go. Please, for me. I love you." And just like that, the weight vanished. The 6 guys lifted it up effortlessly, like it was empty. That should have been the first red flag. Billy was listening, and he wasn't planning on leaving her alone. After the funeral, Nina stuck to the plan. She moved to the big city for college, just like they had promised each other. She got a small apartment, tried to start over, but she was lonely. God, she was lonely. Then the dreams started. At first, they were sweet. She'd dreamed that Billy picked her up in his Mustang. They'd drive through the cornfields back home, hold hands, laugh, just like old times. But every dream ended the same way. The cornfields would disappear, replaced by a dark, dense forest. Billy would take her hand and lead her into the trees, deeper and deeper into the woods. And soon, the dreams changed. They stopped being innocent. Nina started dreaming that Billy was coming into her bed, not to talk, to touch. She told me that when he was alive, they were waiting for marriage. They were innocent. But in these dreams, Billy was starving. He was aggressive. He would tear her clothes off, pinning her down with a strength that felt too real. She could feel everything, his cold skin, his rough hands, and the pain. It hurt, she said. It felt like being ripped apart. But in the dream, she wanted it. She missed him so much that she let this shadow Billy do whatever he wanted. 3 months went by. Nina wasted away. She dropped 30 pounds. She looked like a walking skeleton. Her skin turned gray. Her eyes sunk deep into her skull. And she got mean. She hated men. If a guy in class even looked at her, she'd snap at him, tell him to back off. She isolated herself completely. Every night, Billy came back, and he started talking. "Why did you go to class?" he'd whisper in the dark. "I told you to stay here. You're my wife. We're married now. We have a baby on the way. You belong to me." Nina believed him. She stopped leaving her apartment. She laid in bed all day, waiting for the sun to go down so she could be with her dead husband. Her mom finally got worried when Nina stopped answering calls. She drove up to the city to check on her. When she saw Nina, this emaciated, pale ghost of a girl, she almost fainted. Her mom stayed over to take care of her, and that first night, she found out the truth. Around 2 a.m., Nina's mom heard noises from the bedroom, moaning. The sound of the bed springs creaking rhythmically. Squeak, squeak. She thought Nina had snuck a guy in. Furious, she unlocked the door and burst in. The room was empty. Just Nina on the bed. But Nina was thrashing. Her legs were spread wide, her back arched off the mattress. Her hands were gripping the sheets so hard her knuckles were white. She was moaning Billy's name, her hips bucking up and down against nothing. It looked like an invisible man was on top of her. Her mom didn't hesitate. She rushed over and slapped Nina hard across the face. "Wake up! Nina, wake up!" Nina gasped and woke up, confused, sweating, and crying for Billy. The next morning, her mom didn't take her to a doctor. She threw Nina in the car and drove straight back to their hometown, to her grandmother's house. Nana. Nana was a tough old woman. She knew the old ways. One look at Nina, and she knew exactly what was attached to her granddaughter. She made Nina kneel in the living room. She took out a family Bible and a jar of what looked like water, but smelled like moonshine and herbs. She made Nina drink it all. The second that liquid hit Nina's stomach, she started screaming. Her body temperature spiked. She flailed around, growling in a voice that wasn't hers. "Let me go. She's mine. She's my wife." Her uncles had to hold her down. In her delirium, Nina was back in the dream. She was at the edge of the dark forest. Billy was gripping her arm, dragging her violently towards a blinding light deep in the woods. "Come on!" Billy screamed, his face twisted and angry. "We're going home. Our house is right there, through that door." "No," Nina cried, trying to pull back. "It hurts." "Billy, stop. You're coming with me." Just as he was about to drag her through that light, an old man stepped out of the shadows. He was dressed in a suit from the 1950s. It was Nina's great-grandfather, the patriarch of the family who had died years ago. He held a long, black leather whip. He looked at Billy with pure fury. "Boy!" the old man boomed. "Where do you think you're taking my granddaughter?" Billy snarled. "Back off, old man. She's mine." The great-grandfather raised the whip. Crack! He struck Billy right across the legs. Billy howled and let go of Nina. Then, the old man turned to Nina. Crack! He whipped her right on the calves. "Go home," he shouted at her. "You aren't dead yet. Go back to your mother." Billy tried to lung for her again, but the old man unleashed a fury of lashes, driving him back into the darkness. Crack! Crack! Nina felt the sting on her legs. It burned like fire. She screamed, "It hurts! Mom, help me!" And she woke up. She was lying on Nana's living room floor, soaked in sweat, and her legs? They were throbbing. She checked them. There were red welts on her calves, real marks. After that night, Billy never came back. The dreams stopped. Nina gained the weight back, finished school. But she's alone. She's never dated anyone since. She told me that every time she tries to get close to a man, she sees Billy's face. Not the monster in the dream, but the boy who died reaching for her hand. She's terrified that if she loves again, she'll be betraying him, or worse, she'll wake him up. So yeah, till death do us part, right? Sometimes death is just the beginning of the obsession. Sleep tight, and if you dream of your ex tonight, run.